They say strength is born from necessity. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who could carry the weight of 4 lives on her shoulders. But here I am, Avery Lane, single mother to Hudson, Marin, Theo, and Leia. People call me resilient, but I never asked to be. I just did what I had to do when the man I once loved disappeared the moment I needed him most. It's funny how life brings you full circle when you least expect it. Tonight, I'm standing at the entrance of the Monteverde Education Foundation Gala, the event of the season where glimmering gowns and polished smiles disguise old money and even older secrets I hadn't planned to attend. But when Hudson's scholarship was announced, I knew I had to come for him and for the others. What I didn't expect was the thunderstorm of the past crashing through the golden doors behind me, Gabriel Ashford. The name still echoes in the chambers of my memory, but it's no longer tethered to pain. Not anymore. I gave up hoping he'd come back. Years ago, when he discovered I couldn't have children. Naturally, he walked away. No fight, no compromise, just silence. I grieved, but I moved on. Not out of strength, but out of necessity. I look down at my children, each dressed with care. Hudson, the eldest, stands tall, like his father, his sharp jaw and stormy eyes commanding attention. Marin's poise is natural, a quiet confidence wrapped in a sapphire gown. Theo, ever the explorer, fidgets beside her, his mind probably calculating how many desserts he can snag without anyone noticing. And Leia, sweet, stubborn, Leia clutches my hand tightly as if she knows tonight holds more weight than a scholarship ceremony. As we walk through the ballroom, I feel eyes on us. Whispers flutter in the corners of the room, but I keep my head high. I am not ashamed. I have nothing to hide. The music shifts a slow melody filling the air. And that's when I see him. Gabriel, older now, but unmistakable, his eyes widen for a moment. Time seems to stretch between us like a taut string. His gaze moves past me to the children, and I see it, recognition. His mask falters. He takes a step forward, then another, Avery. His voice is laced with disbelief, but underneath it is something sharper, fear. Yes, I say calmly. It's been a long time. His eyes flick to the children again. Are they? I smile softly, not with malice, but with the quiet satisfaction of truth. They're mine and yours, Gabriel. But we'll get to that part soon enough. Gabriel looked like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes darted from Hudson to Theo to Marin and Leia, as though trying to piece together a puzzle that had already been solved. His lips parted, but no words came out. I could see the panic settling in his eyes behind that perfect, polished exterior he'd always worn so well. I didn't flinch, I didn't blink, I just stood there letting him take in the faces of the 4 people he never thought would exist. They look like, he began, then stopped himself. He shook his head slightly like he was trying to snap out of a dream. Avery, I don't understand. This isn't possible, isn't it? I replied, my tone calm, even. You left before you ever really knew what was possible. The words hit him harder than I expected. His jaw tightened and he glanced around the ballroom, as if hoping the walls would swallow him whole. I could see the questions forming behind his eyes. Calculations, doubts, desperation. The Gabriel I remember didn't like uncertainty. And tonight, I was the walking, talking embodiment of it. You told me, he said, slowly lowering his voice, you told me you couldn't conceive naturally. I finished for him and you left. That part hasn't changed. Hudson stepped slightly in front of me, his protective instinct as strong as his father's used to be. Gabriel noticed it too. He stared at Hudson for a long moment, and I watched as the realization began to crack through his composure. How old is he? He asked quietly, almost afraid to hear the answer. 15, I said. They're all yours. Gabriel staggered back a step like I'd struck him. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering something I couldn't catch. For a long moment, he just stood there, silent, pale, shaken. I could see him wrestling with the math, the timeline, the memories. He looked at me again this time, not as a ghost from the past, but as a woman holding a truth he never thought he'd face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. I took a breath, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to remind myself that I had nothing to prove anymore. "You made your choice, Gabriel. You walked away when things got hard. I had to make mine after." The children shifted behind me, uncertain but quiet. They knew nothing of this man, only that he was someone from a time before them. I wasn't going to shatter their world. Not yet, but the truth had been placed on the table, and Gabriel had no choice now but to look at it head on. "I need to talk to you," he said finally. "Please." His voice was no longer polished or sure. It was raw, vulnerable. But this wasn't just about me anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. "I'm not the only one you need to talk to," I said softly, my eyes flicking to the kids, "but I'll listen tomorrow somewhere quiet." Gabriel nodded, still dazed. As he walked away, I turned to Hudson and the others. "Who was that?" Hudson asked, his voice low. I hesitated only a second. Someone I used to know. And now he'd have to reckon with who we'd all become without him. Gabriel showed up the next morning, right on time, as if punctuality could somehow make up for 15 years of absence. I met him at the quiet cafe near my work, the kind of place where the baristas know your order before you speak and where secrets can be whispered without echoes. He looked different in the light of day, less polished, more human. "I didn't sleep," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. His fingers tapped anxiously on the table. I couldn't stop thinking about them. About you, about how I missed it all. I didn't respond right away. I stirred my coffee, watching the swirl of cream disappear. "You didn't just miss it. Gabriel, you walked away from it." He winced. "I know, I thought when you told me about the diagnosis, I thought it was the end of the road. I was scared, angry, and selfish." I met his gaze, letting the silence stretch just long enough to remind him that guilt doesn't earn forgiveness. It earns the chance to try. "After you left," I began, my voice calm, "I joined a research trial, Novogenesis. They were testing new methods of conception for women with fertility issues. I didn't do it to replace you. I did it because I still wanted a family, even if I had to build it alone." His breath caught. "So what they did, they used my—" "Yes," I said quietly. "They used the samples you gave back when we were trying. IVF. You signed the release, remember? You said if I ever wanted to try again, I had your permission." His eyes dropped to the table. He looked as if he was sifting through the years of forgotten paperwork in his mind, trying to remember a moment that changed everything without him realizing it. "I thought nothing would come of it," he whispered. "I thought we were done. I wasn't," I said simply. "And I got 4 beautiful miracles." He looked up again. "Why didn't you tell me all these years? Because you made it clear you didn't want children. At least not with me. I wasn't going to chase you down just to share something you didn't think you wanted. They weren't a burden. They were my life." He leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands. I could tell the weight was crushing him. Too many years, too many assumptions. And now 4 walking, breathing reminders of a life he never knew he had. "I want to know them," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Please, I don't care how long it takes." I studied him for a long moment. His desperation didn't come from entitlement. It came from regret. "I had a DNA test done," I told him last year when Hudson started asking questions about his medical history. "You're the biological father." "No question," he nodded slowly. "I want to do this right, Avery. Not just show up with gifts or apologies. I want to earn a place in their lives, then start by showing up." I said every time, "No excuses." He reached across the table and placed a trembling hand over mine. I'm sorry. I left. I'm more sorry than you'll ever know. I looked down at his hand, then back into his eyes. Then show me, show them. Words aren't enough anymore. And just like that, a door cracked open. Not wide, but enough for him to see inside the world he'd abandoned and maybe find a way back in. If someone had told me a year ago that Gabriel Ashford would be standing in my kitchen elbow, deep in pancake batter, while Theo lectured him on the proper ratio of syrup to butter, I'd have laughed, maybe even choked on my coffee. But here he was, sleeves rolled up, hair tasseled, trying his best not to burn breakfast. The kids didn't make it easy for him. Not at first. Hudson barely spoke to him. The first 2 visits, he'd sit at the far end of the room, arms folded, face stone, cold. Moran was polite, but distant, always watching, always evaluating. Theo surprisingly warmed up the quickest. I think he just liked having a new audience for his non-stop curiosity. And Laia, well, she was quiet, guarded. She clung to me like a shadow every time Gabriel came around, eyes flicking between us, unsure if this stranger was someone she was supposed to trust. But Gabriel didn't flinch. He showed up over and over again. Every Saturday, he'd be there at 9:00 a.m. Sharp, sometimes earlier, armed with board games, books and patience, lots of patience. He asked questions not just about the kids, but about me, my routines, our struggles, how I managed 4 lives on my own. And he listened, really listened, like he was trying to fill in every blank space he'd left behind. It wasn't grand gestures that earned their attention. It was the little things, like remembering Marin's favourite tea, or fixing the wobbly leg on Hudson's desk, without being asked, helping Theo build a volcano for his science fair, sitting through Laia's entire ballet recital without checking his phone once. And he started to change not just with the kids, but in himself. Gabriel used to be all sharp suits and sharper words, the type of man who measured success by numbers and power. But now he was softer, still guarded. Yes, but with edges worn down by something real. One evening, I found him and Hudson in the garage working on an old bike I hadn't gotten around to fixing. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed, watching, as Gabriel handed Hudson a wrench, guiding him patiently. You ever wonder what it would have been like if you'd known sooner? Hudson asked. Gabriel didn't answer right away. He sat back on his heels, wiping grease off his hands. Every single day, he said, but wondering won't change the past. I can't get back those years, Hudson. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was honest. And from the way Hudson nodded just barely, I knew it landed. Later that night, when the kids had gone to bed, Gabriel lingered in the kitchen with me. We stood in that familiar quiet, the kind that used to stretch between us years ago, but now it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. They're incredible, he said. You raised them right. I tried, I said, and now it's your turn. He smiled, tired but hopeful. I'm ready for all of it. And for the first time, I believed him. It's strange how quickly routines can shift, how a man once erased from your future can begin to shape your present. I used to plan my days around pickups, meal preps, work, and scraped knees. Now Gabriel was becoming part of that rhythm, not the centre of it, but a part. The kids were still feeling him out in their own ways. Hudson kept his distance, but it was no longer from anger. He was watching Gabriel, silently tracking his consistency, his tone, the effort behind his words. Trust doesn't come easy to a boy who watched his mother carry the world alone. But I could see the thaw, the way he lingered in rooms longer, when Gabriel was around, the way he started asking, "Is he coming this weekend?" Marin, ever the analyst, kept a quiet log of every interaction. I caught her one day scribbling in her journal at the dining table. "Just observations," she said when I asked. "I'm trying to decide if he's who he says he is." Fair enough. Theo was in heaven. Gabriel took him to the Science Museum. sat through every insect documentary he could find, and even agreed to be the test subject for a baking soda experiment that went very wrong in my living room. I should have been mad. Instead, I laughed until I cried, watching them both covered in foam. And Laia sweet cautious, Laia had finally let go of my hand. She now reached for Gabriel's fingers sometimes, when they crossed the street or sat beside him to colour. She didn't say much, but she smiled more. And that was everything. I watched all of it from a careful distance. I didn't interfere, I didn't push. This was their relationship to shape, not mine to dictate. But every glance, every exchanged laugh or quiet moment between them, it chipped away at the wall I'd built around myself. And that scared me. Gabriel was stepping into their lives with sincerity, and for the first time in years, I found myself stepping back. He took Hudson to a father-son hiking event, helped Marin write her essay on forgiveness, built a birdhouse with Theo, and read Laia bedtime stories with his deep, steady voice that made her eyelids flutter shut before he even reached the end. The house felt different when he was in it. Fuller, like there was one less chair, sitting empty at the table. One night after everyone was asleep, Gabriel and I sat on the back porch under a blanket of stars. Neither of us spoke for a long while. He was sipping tea, something he used to mock me for drinking, and I was just watching him exist. "I didn't come back expecting you to forgive me," he said quietly, "but I hope someday you can." "I don't know what forgiveness looks like," I admitted, "but I know what effort looks like, and you're doing it." He nodded. "I'll keep doing it for them, for you if you'll let me." I didn't answer. Not yet. But I didn't push him away either, because maybe this wasn't just a return. Maybe it was a beginning, a fragile, honest beginning, wrapped in the messiness of the past and the promise of something more. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to see where it might lead. There's a quiet that settles in after the storm, the kind that doesn't come from silence but from peace, and for the first time in years our house was full of it. Not perfect, not without friction or awkward moments, or the occasional outburst from a teenager who still didn't know what to call the man who suddenly appeared in his life. But there was a rhythm now, a heartbeat that pulsed through the walls and around our dinner table. Gabriel never missed a weekend. Even when work called, even when flights got delayed, he made it back. Sometimes late, sometimes exhausted, but always there. The kids started counting on it. I did too, in a way I wasn't ready to admit, not even to myself. Hudson began helping him with small projects around the house, installing shelves, fixing leaky faucets. The silence between them turned into short conversations, then longer ones. One evening, I overheard Hudson mutter, "It's good you're here." Just 6 words, but Gabriel looked like he'd been handed the moon. Marin, after months of observation, finally handed him her journal. "You passed," she said with a half-smile. Gabriel opened it and found pages filled with dates, moments, and at the end, a note. "I believe people can change." Theo started calling him Dad, by accident, then by choice. And Leela, one night after a story, she climbed into his lap and whispered, "I'm glad you're my daddy." I don't think Gabriel spoke for the rest of the night. And me, I watched it all unfold, like someone seeing colour for the first time after a lifetime in grayscale. I'd spent so long being strong, being everything for everyone, that I forgot what it felt like to lean back and let someone else take the wheel, even if just for a moment I still had my guard up. How could I not? But I found myself letting him into the moments that mattered. Grocery runs, teacher conferences, Sunday mornings in pyjamas with messy hair and burnt toast. He didn't run from any of it. In fact, he leaned in fully, completely, and without hesitation. One evening, he found me in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping wine as the kids watched a movie in the living room. "I don't want to keep showing up as a guest," he said. "I want to build a life with you again." Not because I feel guilty, but because I love you still. Maybe even more now I didn't speak right away. My heart pounded with 1,000 unsaid things. But instead of pushing him away, I reached for his hand. Then start by staying, I said, and he did. It wasn't about picking up where we left off. That version of us was gone. This was something new, built on truth. Time and the messy beauty of second chances. Forgiveness doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in quietly over breakfast tables and bedtime routines, over repaired trust and consistent love. But it comes, and with it, the possibility of something even better than what we once had. A year has passed since Gabriel walked back into our lives. The seasons changed like they always do. Leaves turned, snow fell, flowers bloomed again. But this time we changed too. Not all at once. Not in some grand cinematic moment, but in hundreds of quiet ways that stitched our broken pieces into something whole. This morning, I watched Gabriel braid Ela's hair on the porch swing. She was chattering about her school play, and he was nodding with exaggerated seriousness, completely focused on not pulling too hard. It was a small moment, maybe even forgettable to someone else, but to me it meant everything. He stayed. That's what matters most. Not that he came back, but that he stayed. He moved into the house 6 months ago, not with a suitcase and a speech, but slowly, respectfully. A drawer here, a toothbrush there, the kids decided where his books would go, which shelf would hold his records. It was their way of saying, you belong. Hudson now calls him Dad in texts and conversation, though he pretends not to make a big deal of it. Marin sometimes confides in him when she thinks I'm being too emotional. Theo insists on being on Gabriel's trivia team every family game night, and Laya, she's claimed his lap as her official storytelling throne. We still have hard days, mornings when the house is too loud, schedules clash, emotions run high. But those days feel different now, less lonely, more like growing pains in a family, finally finding its rhythm. And me, I've let go of the version of myself who always had to be in control. I still lead, still love fiercely, but I no longer carry the weight alone. I've learned how to lean back, how to breathe deeper. I've even started painting again, something I gave up years ago. Gabriel set up a little studio space in the sunroom. You deserve your own corner, he said. And in that quiet gesture, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. There's a photo framed in our hallway, now taken at Weiler's birthday party last month. All 6 of us arms wrapped around each other, frosting on our noses, mid-laughter. It's not perfect. We're not perfectly posed. The lighting is off and Gabriel's eyes are half closed. But it's real. And that's the life we've built. A real one, messy, beautiful, ours. Sometimes I still think about the woman I was when Gabriel first left. Heartbroken, determined, terrified. And I think about the woman I've become. Not because of him, but because of the journey I had to take without him. The strength I found in silence. The joy I carved from the unknown. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant creating space for something better, for healing, for rebuilding. Gabriel isn't a symbol of regret anymore. He's a symbol of change of possibility, of the way people can evolve when given the chance and the choice. And now, when I look at my family, my whole family, I see something I never expected to find again. Hope. Not the fragile kind, but the steady growing kind that lives in bedtime. Kisses and family dinners and whispered, I love yous. We're not just surviving anymore, we're living together.